Hey everybody, I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. This is pre-recorded, so if the chat shows up because I don't know how to make it not show up, um, just know that it's pre-recorded. Um, it's taken me a little longer to be able to get around to this one because it is probably getting to the more emotional part and a hard part of my story, which is has to do with my mom. Not because of anything necessarily horrible, but it's just hard because she's not with me anymore. And my last child was only 9 months old when she passed away. So, with that being said, wow, somebody's really loud on the motorcycle. But anyway, with that being said, I just want to um, play this song and then we shall get started. And all I know is till I see the purpose in the pain. The joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord is my strength. Oh, yes, He is my strength every single day. Oh, some things I can't explain. Oh, 'cause some hurt don't have a name. And all I know is till I see the purpose in the pain. The joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord is my strength. Oh, yes, He is my strength every single day. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that. And indeed, the joy of the Lord is my strength. That's my mom up there, and she's on the right, and that's me on the left. And that was actually my wedding day. So that was a special day. We just got married on my best friend's deck on the lake, and actually my father-in-law married us, and it was very, very small. It was just immediate family and best friends. I mean, like literally, um, my best friend. She actually was the one that stood beside me in both of my weddings, my first one and the one that stuck, my last one. Um, I got married at 17 the first time. Anyway, back to the story. I can't remember with everything I left off the last time, but I know that it was, um, I was getting into some of this as I got older, with the pageants and all that. And I talked about my mom and my grandma. And in fact, let me see, I think I have a picture of us three. I do. Actually, this was um, at one of my wedding showers, and my nanny is the one with the glasses on, and my mom is to Well, if you're facing the picture to the left, and my nanny has the pink on, but anyway, so you can put faces with the name. They both passed away. My nanny was like my mom. I loved her so much. She was my hero. And honestly, she was really the first one that ever passed away that, like, really just was like a gut punch. And I had to go to counseling and therapy afterwards. I mean, she was my home away from home. She was my safe place to go. The one that would talk to me about Jesus. Um, I stayed with her a lot. I was the only granddaughter on that side, so even though she had a little 2-bedroom house, one of them was pretty much mine. I had my Boy George posters up on the wall whenever I got in middle school, and I really loved to stay with her. I enjoyed it. We would play cards. Her and my pop taught me how to play gin rummy and how to play poker and how to play what were all those things we used to play, spades, all the card games. And from the time I was a little girl, like, we would just go in the dining room and we would all sit around the table, and there, me and my grandma and my pop and one of my grandma's friends, and we would just, her name was Miss Oris, but we'd just sit around that table and we would just play games, and they would just tell stories of like the old days, and I love that. I love listening to people that are older than me tell how things used to be, and I'm thankful that I could appreciate those kind of things when I was younger, honestly. I remember being in my nanny's house, as a matter of fact, and you know, it was maybe a year before she passed away, a year or two. I just remember I was in the bathtub taking a bath, and something just told me this is not going to be this way forever. And it makes me want to cry when I say it. But it just, something inside me just said, it's not going to be this way forever. Just breathe all this in, take it in, look at everything, and just remember every detail. And I can. I can pull that back up, and I can just think of every detail of my nanny's bathroom and how, when I was a little girl, me and her used to take baths together. And I remember that. I mean, I could have been 2, 3, 4 years old, maybe, and I just remember those times. And I love her so much. I loved her so much. I just remember laying in there. She had a day bed in her den and a window unit. Back in those days, not everybody had central air. Well, in these days, not everybody's got it, but um, they didn't have much money. It was a very small house, but it was so home. It was just home. And even though I know this is about me and my mom, I just wanted to explain a little bit about my grandma, because, I mean, honestly, I do feel like she really, in the end, formed me so much into who I am today. My nanny would give you the clothes off of her back, even though she had no money. She didn't have a lot of money. She lived on um, disability because she hurt her back. I think I told you that before in one of my other stories. She hurt her back, and she was young. She was in her 40s, middle 40s, early 40s. Probably earlier than that, honestly. Yeah, probably earlier than that. Because my mom was 17 when I was born, and I don't think she was too much older than that when my mom was born. Um, she may have been 20 when my mom was born, because my mom was her second child. She had my uncle, which was my mom's brother, excuse me, um, whenever she was 16. So that seems to be a running theme in our family. Honestly, I think it was a generational curse to get pregnant young and before you're married, and then end up having to get married until my youngest child, thank God, she has graduated and is in college, and she works, and she has, thank God, um, made a decision until she gets married that she is, you know, going to be just having a relationship with the Lord, basically. She has learned from our mistakes, and honestly, we do have the right to pray over those things and break generational curses, and that is one that I noticed. I looked at my brother and his wife, when they were married. I mean, she was 16 when she got pregnant. They ended up getting married. Um, it just seems that it runs in families. If any of you have any of that in your family, you'll notice it runs in families, like pre, I'm saying, like early term birth, or not early term birth, but just, having babies early and getting married early because you're pregnant. It does seem to run in families sometimes, but um, you got to break that generational curse. You do. You just got to break it in the name of Jesus. That's the only thing I know to do. But it has worked with my very last one, because every one of us got pregnant in high school except for her. So thank you, Lord. Not that I don't want grandchildren, I do, but I just want her to, get married and have time with her husband first before she has a baby. Because, I mean, if you're a good mama, the moment you give birth to that baby, well, the moment you find out you're pregnant, really, your life is no longer your own. You live for that child. That's the way I've always been. That's the way my mama and my grandma were. And I pray to God, you know, that my grandchildren have all been loved and will grow up loved. I mean, I have six, but I know only two of the four of my children have children. And that would be the one that passed away. He's got two boys, and my daughter, my oldest daughter, my oldest child, period. She's the oldest one. She has children. So, um, then my oldest boy does not have children yet, and he is only 33. So he is young, and he's got some time. And of course, my youngest daughter, she's definitely young. She's got time. But she's very headstrong. She says that, she just doesn't see any sense in messing around and talking to a bunch of different guys, unless she has the plan on that they would be a suitable person to marry. I mean, in other words, it's kind of like courting, I guess. You date with a purpose. You don't just jump around from one guy to the next. You only really go out or court someone that you feel that you have enough in common to see if you would even take it to the next level, to court or date. You hang out as friends, and that kind of thing. And I have to say, I mean, she's been really good at that. I'm not going to give too much of her personal life away, but you know, she has had a boyfriend that she grew up in church with, and they knew each other since they were in elementary or middle. Well, they're like a little over a year and a half apart. Um, but they've known each other since they were little. Let's put it that way, and they've grown up in church together, and they started dating about 2 years ago. And she took a little break right now, though. They still talk, and they're still friends, and they still hang out. And um, but I think she does. She works two jobs. She works a full-time job at a doctor's office, and she has another job and she works that job on the weekends. And She is in her freshman year of nursing school. I really am so proud of her. But anyway, this is back to my story about uh, where we're getting to my, days where it was the pageants and my grandmother and my mom. And we traveled a lot. We traveled all the time. I mean, I got to see lots of good places. I got to go a lot of good places and got to experience a lot of good things like New Orleans. We went there every summer from the time I was like, I can't remember, 6 or 7. Every August we would go, and I competed in a pageant, Cinderella, which I've shared some of the pictures um, of that pageant. I have more that I can share, and I will. And in my book that I'm going to write, I'm definitely going to um, share that. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to put my Cash App down there because I don't ask for people to donate money, and I have mentioned many times in the past that I don't, because most of the things that I do, I honestly, it's just praying with people and stuff like that. And I don't believe in putting cash apps for that. And honestly, I wouldn't want to do it either, like with missing children or anything like that. However, I am in, and I have been working on writing my book. And I just don't have a job. I stayed at home as a mother um, when my older 3 kids, were in school. Well, I substituted, of course, for a good while after I closed my hair salon down because honestly, I couldn't be the mother that I wanted to be, and all I ever wanted to be was a mom. And the only reason I wanted to have, a way to work is because when I divorced my first husband, I had to have, money to support my 3 children because he sure didn't pay. So it was just me when I left at 19. I guess I'm gonna kind of go back and forth with this. It looks like, um, no, I wasn't 19. Excuse me, I was 21 when we got a divorce. So, and I was 17 when we got married, and we had 3 children together. And I just call him the sperm donor, and that's about it. But my husband now and I have been together since we were both 21. So that's a long time. And we were best friends also in high school. And he was in my first wedding, and he was at the hospital when all 3 previous children were born. He was their godfather, as a matter of fact. And so it's really strange the way God works things out. But my mom loved him. My grandma loved him. In fact, my nanny right here on her deathbed, my husband was, you know, there with me to see her. And she was like right before they put her on the ventilator. But she just told him how thankful she was, for him and the way that our relationship was, and that she did not have to worry about me. She worried about me a lot when I was married to my first husband with good reason. And I'm so thankful for that. And she said, she was holding his hand, and she said, "Promise me you'll take care of my girl." And he said, "I promise you, Nanny, I will." And he has. And he cries up, or he tears up whenever we talk about that, even now. And we were both at that time, let's see, I think I was 23 when she passed away. Yeah, I think she passed away in 93. I was 23. And so would he have been. Um, so that was really early. And actually, my husband and I, that were now, my current husband, we lived together at that time. And my nanny got to see the house that we lived in. And it was a beautiful 2-story house and had 5 bedrooms and 2 full baths and a den upstairs with a fireplace and a den downstairs with sliding glass doors that went outside to the fenced-in yard for the kids, and we just had it fixed up so cute, and had big cathedral ceilings in the den, and had 3 bedrooms downstairs and 2 bedrooms upstairs, and um, it was kind of like where you walk in on the main level, and then it goes down to like the basement. But it was a very open concept basement. Like the back part of it had sliding glass doors and windows. It was very um, bright down there. It didn't seem like a basement, but anyway, I loved that floor plan. It was a nice house, and honestly, and my husband owned that house. He bought that house when he was like 20, 21, and um, that was, I mean, a pretty good accomplishment, for somebody that age. And now looking back at it, but anyway, it was no help. I mean, no help. He did it completely on his own, and he actually did work for he does pest control, but or they own a pest control company, and they had a contract with the Veterans Administration to do VA houses, and he found that house because he had to treat it for termites, and he got that house for $45,000. He bid on it and won the bid, and he got that house for $45,000. That is I mean, that is amazing, amazing. I still wish we had that house. I love that house, but anyway, back to my grandma and my mom. We went to New Orleans every year, and I just remember like so many details. Some years I remember one year, I think President Carter was still in office, and the gas prices went up like crazy. I mean, like $5 a gallon back then. This would have been like in probably 1978, maybe. Um, and we drove this big, huge, long station wagon. I laugh and call it Batman. It had those Batman looking lights on the back of it, or the Brady Bunch kind of station wagon. It was just like huge, and um, I loved it though because I could like lay down, and like sleep all the way. And those roads were horrible going all the way from the East Coast where I live, and traveling through Georgia and going through, Alabama, Alabama, then Mississippi, and then Louisiana. Those back roads were horrible down there. Um, and I'm sure probably thinking back on that probably has a lot to do with hurricanes that hit that area. But anyway, we used to go there every year, and that big, huge castle looking thing in Jefferson Square, New Orleans. At the pageant, it was Cinderella was the name of it, and the coronation. After they did crowning every year, they had it at that Cinderella looking castle right there on the water in New Orleans, and I remember it still. I have pictures somewhere. I need to find all my pictures like that go back all that way. Especially since, I mean, now my long-term memory is better than my short-term, but and we always stayed at I think we stayed at the Marriott then in New Orleans, if I remember correctly. It was close to the convention center in New Orleans. Well, actually, we stayed in Baton Rouge, was where the hotel was, and a lot of the competition was there. But then we would go to the convention center for the final nights and for the other, like bigger competition part of it. But anyway, that was a huge pageant that we like prepared all year for. There was preliminaries to that, and then we had state, which means that you were eligible to compete anywhere in the state that you resided in for the state competition. And we would stay at a college or university, for a whole week in the summertime, and we got to swim in the pool. We would get to stay in the dorms, and we had parties every night, like Disco Cindy parties is what they were. And I still remember those. And we had different themes for different nights, and we had one night called Perky Presents, and everybody brought one present that was like for every person in your age group. You brought one for each person, and then you would drop it in the bag, and so you would have, and we did that at nationals too. And at nationals, there would usually be 200 or 300 people in a group, so we got a lot of presents at nationals, and it was a huge bag that had handles. And that night for that pageant, we would get to go. And I remember the Disco Cindy song. The Disco Cindy song, still to this day, I remember it. You can look it up yourself. You can look up um, the International Cinderella Beauty Pageant System. It's on YouTube. It's all over YouTube. Um, there was actually a video that somebody had taken of me, and it was the strangest thing because, like, I was probably, I don't know how old I was, maybe 16 at the time. Um, but this guy reached out to me like several years ago and said, "Hey, is this so and so?" And he said my name. That was at the Hyatt Regency in Miami, Florida in 1986 at the Cinderella pageant. And I was like, yeah, which I was thinking, that's weird. I mean, I really am talking like maybe 5 years ago tops. He reached out to me and he said, I just wanted to let you know that we were we were in Miami on vacation, and the pageant just happened to be going on, in the hotel we were staying at. And I have you in a video footage if you want me to send it to you. And he did. He sent it to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so crazy. That is so random. But anyway, I mean, because I don't live in Florida, I live in another state, a couple of states away, as a matter of fact. And there were people there from all over, though. There were people um, at the national level, I'm saying, not the state level like I was talking about earlier, but if you win state, or if you win something like talent or photogenic or the overall, I mean, you get to go to nationals. But you have to qualify to go. But um, and it was in New Orleans, like I said, and then it moved to Miami later. But me and my mom and my nanny and everybody would like all travel together and go. It was so fun. Like, we had so much fun. And they were people all over. I have made friends from Guam, from Bogota, Colombia, South America. I remember a girl that, oh gosh, in fact, Jodie Sweetin was in that pageant, and Tiffany Amber Thiessen, and a friend of mine named Gina Tollison, who ended up marrying Alan Thicke, and is what's his name? Is it Robin Thicke? Oh, that's his mother, I think. Gina is his mother, which she and I competed on the state level together. I mean, we were fairly good friends because we lived in the same state. Um, and so we would see each other at state, and then we'd see each other at nationals. And even though we didn't live in the same area right there together in the same city, we got to see each other at pageants and pageant functions a lot that had to do with Cinderella. But um, it's interesting. I mean, there are more people than that, that have gone on to make it to do other things. But I just find it interesting to think about, like, when you're little like that, you don't ever think about that kind of stuff, or people, going to Hollywood and poor. And I remember, and I've got a video of it somewhere, in fact, and I would love to have those converted on DVD, or like a little chip that you could put for the computer, because Jodie Sweetin, she was just like, she was so cute. She was like maybe 5 when she competed. She was in the top division, and she was just so cute. And um, to know that she ended up, and she got Full House probably about a couple years after that, maybe. But she got in the top 5, and they had online on stage interview, and she was funny. She was really cute. I can definitely see why she got in the top 5. And um, she ended up getting into a big like a lot of addiction stuff and some really bad things when she actually made it after Full House because of some bad things that happened to her. So, everything that glitters is not gold. And I've said that many times because I think I left off maybe even with the modeling thing. I think I talked about that. I might have even got through some of this other stuff. But um yeah, I think I did talk about the pageants in Miami and then in New Orleans. But anyway, so let's get past that. Um uh it's hard to keep it in chronological order. Oh yeah, and I need to put that cash app out there. Because I don't work. I didn't plan on um this part of my life really. I did not ever think about when my kids would be grown. Well, I did think of it, but I figured honestly that I would go back and either work at a hair salon or just open my own hair salon again. I've owned my own hair salon and I've worked at other hair salons. And then I did, hair and makeup even when my kids were coming up, I did hair and makeup when I was able to for pageants and for weddings and for, special events. And I got paid very, very well because I would usually either go to them or go to the event. And, you get paid a lot of money when you do that. But, and also going to pageants, like the state pageants in other states. I know me and my mom would go to a pageant and we would work, that one pageant doing hair and makeup because she did hair and makeup too. Um, but I mean, I'm talking about like in the 1990 era, early 90s, late 80s, after, I had my first child. Then, I didn't really compete anymore after that. I did some later, but not right away. But we went and did hair and makeup, and I know that one pageant in particular, and I had, I think, just two of the kids, and I was pregnant with my third. We walked out of there with over $1,000 a piece for doing hair and makeup for like a weekend. And I mean, I know that doesn't sound like a lot of money now, but we're talking like 1989, or no, 1990. It would be 1990. Yeah. Um, So that was a lot of money for back then. And, I've done so many jobs. I mean, honestly, because, and I'm going to get into this other stuff because I have to lead into, and I really do want to go a little bit more, not every little detail, but just kind of hit the high spots because that's where the book is going to come in. And I wanted to be like a ticker thing on this, but I guess it's not. But I'm not asking anybody to, they don't have to donate. Don't feel obligated. But I mean, if you want to help out, you can, and I'd appreciate it. That would be great. I'm also fixing to, another thing is I'm also fixing to open up a cat sanctuary type thing. My husband is working on a catio. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but I can show you one on a different video, not now. And I'll probably put it up on that as well because it will help feed the cats, help take them to the vet, help make sure they get all their, you know, shots and everything until they can be adopted out. And I think I'm going to call it Sayla's CS. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. No, Sayla's Siesta Cat Away. But I already have the plans and everything, how I want him to do it. And I think it's going to be a pretty cool thing. Because literally everybody and their brother, if they find a stray cat or end up with a stray cat, I am the one that gets called. And sometimes we've had to say no, that there's nothing we can do, and that breaks my heart. But anyway, we live in an area that is easily accessible. I think it would go over well. And I think a lot of children, a lot of cats, well, they feel like my children now, but a lot of cats would get rehomed. But anyway, I'm just putting it up there. Um, if you want to help with the cats, or if you want to help with me and my book, anything that has to do with, the Lord would give me a word on anything, or it has to do with me praying with people in my lives and stuff when I pray with people. Like, if, I mean, on every live, I'll pray for somebody no matter what, depending on what the purpose for the video is. But I don't like to put cash apps out when it has to do with like missing children, or when it has to do with anything that the Lord has told me specifically to say or do. Like if He's given me a dream or something like that. Like I don't, it's fine for other people. I'm just saying, as for me, I don't feel comfortable with it. And I really hadn't felt comfortable putting my cash app out there. But I do have a friend, and I'm not going to say her name, but she knows who she is because we've talked. She's another creator, a YouTube creator. And she told me, she said, "You're not really asking for anything, but you don't work. And it does take up a lot of time to do some of these videos. And as long as it doesn't have to do with that kind of stuff that you feel about, you know, just do it that way." And she's right. There's nothing wrong with putting it out there and just saying, if you want to help with my cat sanctuary, especially now that we're building the catio. And cat food is not expensive when you buy it by the 15-pound bags. It's not inexpensive. It's very expensive. um, you know, and my cats are very well taken care of, which I'm going to do a whole another cat video and show a catio and show all my little cats that I have now. And not little, but some of them I'm keeping. Some of these I'm keeping. A couple of them are going to be up for adoption. But um, I just want a place where they're safe, because we do have hawks and vultures around here that I do believe took away a couple of my cats, and I am horrified of that happening again. So that being said, that's why we're doing that. But back to the story. Um, I've been working on this book for a while, and it's really hard because what I'm fixing to talk about, there are two things that are very heavy, and I've really avoided it like the plague. Um, One, I started dating way too early. My mom, I love her so much. I mean, me and my mom were like best friends and frenemies. And we were both very opinionated and strong headed, and the typical pageant mama, I guess you'd say. But she never like, she did hit me with brushes and stuff sometimes at pageants if I didn't listen. Like with the scoutmaster, I'd get on the leg. She did slap me in the face a couple times. She backhanded me, and I'm not talking poorly of my mother because she's passed on now, and I wouldn't. Um, but she wasn't perfect. She just wasn't perfect. And looking back, she lived in a lot of stuff with my dad. She really did. When I was little, I didn't see it because my dad was a very, very good narcissist. I hate to say that. I love my daddy, and I was a daddy's girl. They only had two kids, a boy and a girl, and I was my daddy's girl, no doubt about that. But it did not create a very good dynamic in our family, in our home, because my dad drank. I mentioned that before. He was an alcoholic, and he was very easy on me and gave me pretty much anything that he could possibly. And he had no problem showing love to me, but he never really showed attention or love to my mom that I saw. Um, and he cheated on her all the time, and he would go on benders and be gone for days, and we would go to my grandma's, my nanny's, and stay. And I told y'all about, driving around at 2 and 3 in the morning when I'm supposed to get up and go to school the next morning, and she's out looking for him at hotels and motels and drive-ins, and where I was conceived at a drive-in. Me and Sherry have that in common. Um, And she's already told it, so that's why I'm only repeating it. I would never say something she told me in confidence, but we've talked about that a lot of times on different lives, so we have that in common. One of many things that I laugh about that, but um, anyway, my mom had to get married, like I said, to my dad because she was pregnant with me. And I remember we were riding down the road. I think I was like 10, and I figured it out, like when their anniversary was, and I figured out how long, when they tell you, how babies and where they come from and all that good stuff um, at school. And I figured it out. And I got in the car with her that day. I remember this is one time she backhanded me. And I said, Mama, and I remember exactly where we were. We were rounding the corner, almost home, almost at our house. And I said, Mama, were you pregnant with me when you and Daddy got married? Did you have to marry him because of me? And she backhanded me in the mouth. I was sitting up front with her. And I just remember like thinking, wow, like she blames me for having to be with him. Like I just remember that day thinking that. And truly, my dad, he paid for these pageants, and pageants are not cheap. And he owned a construction company, and my granddaddy, I mentioned he owned one of the biggest construction companies here and where we live, and did work in other states as well. But uh, that was that side of the family that had money, my dad's side. And listen, they paid for a lot of stuff, and pageants, like I said, and they have to have your clothes custom made. I had a seamstress, and I just remember like it being 1 in the morning and me standing up on this round platform for hours and hours and hours with dress after dress or outfit or sportswear or swimsuit or costume for talent or whatever it was, and just having to stand there hours to be pinned and fitted. And it wouldn't go just one time. I mean, I would have to have several fittings for each outfit. And yeah. So anyway, it's like, huh, you grow up in things and you think it's like completely normal and that every other kid in the world goes through it until you get in school. And then you realize that other kids don't go and do this. But I had fun. Like, I'm not going to lie and say that pageants weren't fun, because they were. And like I said, I met so many friends, and it honestly formed who I am today. So I cannot despise it. And I have actually, my mom was a pageant director. I have put on pageants. I've been a pageant director. I've judged pageants all over the whole East Coast, um, in other states, and here. And, you know, I mean, doing hair and makeup for pageants all those years. I mean, I am very deeply enmeshed in that world. So it is hard for me to see it in a negative light, honestly. I mean, I do see some negative things that can happen, just like they can happen with anything else. I mean, I have seen my dad, be a coach for my brother's little league, and oh my gosh, he was way worse on my brother than my mama ever was on me with pageants. Truly. And my dad wasn't the only one, every other coach out there. And the parents in the stands, they're horrible. I mean, so, and look at soccer, look at every single sport activity there is. Now, I understand some people think that the objectifying the children in the pageants is not good. And I totally get that from the outside looking in, and a little bit even from the inside looking in. I see that, some weirdo off the street could come in, especially in the bigger pageants, because you cannot keep track when you're staying, in a humongous hotel with a convention center attached to it, with like a mall hooked to it and all this other kind of stuff. And there's kids running around everywhere. Like I told you before, I had that incident at Cinderella in Miami in the very late 80s, like 87. I think it was that I mentioned it. I think possibly it was Ghislaine Maxwell and um, Jeffrey Epstein, because their place was not very far from where we were staying at the Hyatt Regency, where Biscayne Bay was in Miami. It wasn't very far from Palm Springs at all. And this pageant was televised in Miami, well, in the Dade County area, and down in Florida at that time. And so they knew about it. They knew that there was a child beauty pageant that had ages 3, to 17, coming from all over the United States, Puerto Rico, even Guam, South America, uh, people, like I told you, there was a girl that came from Bogota, Colombia. I mean, so think about this. That is like the perfect playground for somebody like that. However, I will say this, even as big as that pageant was, they actually called a meeting and told that several people had been approached that they were a talent scout, and modeling scout, and they were trying to get parents to give them their phone numbers and stuff, and they were handing card. I don't know like what all happened, but they told us, do not give your information out to anyone there, that if there were any scouts there, that they would let us know who they were. So just because it was a man and a woman, do not trust that. And I'm thankful. Carl Dunn and Craig Toller were the 2 directors for that pageant. And actually, Carl Dunn used to be a Catholic priest before he left, because he was homosexual, and he ended up falling in love with Craig Toller. So I've been raised around all of that stuff. I mean, being gay meant, that was so common to me, and I was around so many gay people, like that was like just normal, very normal, very normal. um to the point that like I didn't understand the big deal when all the gay stuff started. Like, I don't know, it's just, when you're enmeshed in the fashion industry, that's just a part of it. So I'm trying to think back to, it's hard. I need to keep an outline close by, and so I can stay on point. Okay. That when my mom backhanded me whenever I found out that she was pregnant with me when she got married, that was one thing that was a very defining moment in my life. Also, when I was 5, I do have memories, and I've shared it before. I don't really want to get very heavily into it, because I will in the book probably, but I remember a black and white checkerboard floor. I remember sitting in a hallway. I don't remember how I got there. I do remember my hair being in 2 pigtails on each side, and me wearing one of my favorite dresses. And I remember sitting on what looked like, a booth almost. It was blue. And it looked like a booth that would sit up to a table, but it was just up against the wall and there was nothing in front of it. And I remember there was a water fountain out there, and I was not big enough to reach the top of the water fountain. I was on my tippy toes, and a lady was out there, and she said, "Are you thirsty?" And she lifted me up to get a sip of water, but then she brought me a cup of juice, something like punch. And the weird thing is, I just remember sitting there, and all of a sudden I started feeling dizzy. Like I had to take Benadryl because I had allergies, and it felt like somebody had given me like a bunch of Benadryl or something. And I started feeling very woozy. And these are from my memories of when I was like 5. So this had been in like 1975. Now remember that black and white checkerboard floor, because that really stuck out in my mind, and that is really the thing that made me start remembering and help remembering all the things. And I still haven't recovered all the memories, and I don't want to. I don't want to poke into it any more than I have, and the more that, like, I don't want to remember more than I already do because it's already hard enough. But I mentioned that the whole side of my dad's family are Freemasons and Eastern Stars, and I don't mean the regular third degree. I mean 33rd degree. Not my dad, but my granddad and higher. His descendants up to, I mentioned before who, which wrote the Bill of Rights. Like, I'm his descendant with the last name. Same. I mean, it's just in my family. Like, it is a generational thing that goes way back before we ever came over here on that side of my family to Ireland and Scotland. And I'm just saying that anyway, back to that, which I've been avoiding wanting to talk about. I was 5, and I fell asleep there, obviously, I guess. I just remember laying over, like, on the seat, kind of halfway, kind of just laying down. But then the next thing I know is that I kind of was coming to a little bit. I remember my bottom touching on something velvet under me. And I had a dress made of velvet, as you saw on my preview that I did with my pictures, where I sang for Jimmy Carter, which was around the same age. This may have been a little before or a little after. It's hard to pinpoint exactly, the dates of things like that. But I know the age because I know, like, the clothes that I was wearing and, the things that were going on. But my grandfather went to Washington, D.C. with me both years I sang for Jimmy Carter. And that was in my prelude. I wanted to show some pictures, so people can just kind of see, what I'm talking about. But um, that green dress that I was wearing, because I was the one that was little, with the crown on in the front, even though the picture's kind of worn. Um, I was wearing a green hoop skirt velvet dress that hung all the way to the floor. That's the one I said I peed on the floor in the White House lawn, on the White House lawn. You can see where Jimmy Carter standing in the background there. Okay, well, we were out there singing, and I stood up there for so long, and we had on thermal underwear underneath our velvet dresses. Well, my dress is velvet. And I had that little muff thing on my hand. I don't remember if it was that year or the next year, but I just remember I had to pee so bad, and I kept telling somebody beside me, I'm not gonna say who it is. I know who it is, but I'm not gonna name her name. But I kept telling them, I was like, I've got to pee. I've got to pee. Like, and they kept saying, just hold it, just hold it. Well, I mean, I'm little, and also I had a small bladder because I used to pee in the bed when I was little, and that could have come from trauma also. But anyway, I don't know if this happened in Washington, in DC, because the Grand Lodge is there when you have to take the 33rd degree oath. I don't know when my grandfather took his. So I don't know. Okay. And I don't know, and I don't remember who took me there. But I do know the only time that my grandfather on that side, my daddy's side, ever had anything to do with anything I ever did was only when I went and sang for President Carter at the Christmas tree lighting pageant thing. They called it a pageant. It wasn't like a beauty pageant. It was just called that, like a pageantry thing. And they lit the lights on the Christmas tree those 2 years. And I was there. And my grandma and my granddad on that side, the Mason, you know, the Mason side, they they came to that, and they literally never went to. I mean, not one thing else, nothing, not for school, not for pageants, not anything. Of course, they bragged when I was on TV or anything like that, you know, but they never came to any other pageant or any other thing. I find that odd. And then when I have these memories of this black and white checkerboard floor, and then that falling asleep, and then I remember waking up and I feel this velvet underneath me, like a velvet cloth of some sort. And I'm on some kind of a table in the middle of this room that is dark, dimly lit. And there's a bunch of pillar candles, like that are At that time, they probably were my height or so. They were not short, they were tall. And I think there were some varying sizes, but they were all around the altar thing. That's what I'm going to call it, an altar. Um, and there were men all around me from what I can remember. And I just remember waking up and looking and feeling that on my bottom and seeing these men around me, all around me, circled around me, in these black cloak looking things like a judge would wear almost. But if they had on hoods, it's like I left my body and I was like hovering over and looking down at myself, and I kind of was away. It was weird. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But I saw like the flicker of the candles on, like some of the men were bald and their heads were shiny. And I can just remember the flickering of the candles shining on the top of some of their heads that were bald. And I just remember it having that black and white checkerboard floor there also in there. And that was different from where I was before, because I didn't see none of that stuff whenever I was in like a little hallway sitting there or something where that lady was. That was the only lady I ever saw. And they gave me the drink, the punch. And I don't know if it was regular punch or if they gave me something or if I had to wait out there so long I just fell asleep. But I feel like I had a bunch of Benadryl is what I felt like. And even when I woke up then, it was a dream kind of like state almost. Okay, if you want to picture like a Rosemary Baby situation where she thought she didn't know she was dreaming when that happened to her where she got raped. She doesn't know if she was dreaming or not, remember? So it was kind of like that, you know, but it was scary and I was really young and I just remember some things that I don't want to talk about. And I remember some things even I don't know, just you know what I mean. So that, you know, even if you don't remember it when you're little all the way of everything what happened, it still affects your body. Our body affect it responds to trauma. And so like I said, that was around 5 or 6 years old. Um and then I think that maybe those things in my life, those certain things that have happened in my life younger, may have affected me wanting to date. And like I felt unloved, not by my grandma. I felt very loved by my nanny, the one in this picture right here. Very loved by her and my pop. And I knew my mama loved me and I knew my daddy loved me, but they were both very young and still kind of selfish in ways. Um, so I went and stayed with my nanny a lot, but sometimes I wonder if that's why I started dating. And the guy that I started dating so early, I was 14, and my mom, she would let me go over there and hang out by myself at 14. She'd drop me off over there. And he was 16, so he could drive. Um, but his car was broke, and I remember she dropped me off there a time or two. But and you know, he would come and stay over at our house all the time and hang out, and we'd go swimming out in the pool by ourselves all the time, if you get what I'm saying. And my mom, like, I don't know, it's like she put focus on things that were like insignificant and not important, and was very strict on me with those things. And the things that she should have been strict on, like, she wasn't. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of weird. I don't know how to explain it. Like, she threw me a PJ party for my 16th birthday. Literally made the PJ herself, which is called It's terrible, but the name of it back then was Purple Jesus, and it was like purple Kool-Aid, and it had all these cut up fruits in a big trash can that was clean. It was like a brand new trash can. And you filled it up with fruit punch, purple fruit punch or purple punch, and all these different fruits in Everclear. Not kidding. And she rented this little, like, how you can rent those conference rooms at like hotels, and she literally rented one of those out and had a DJ there and had a trash can full of PJ for a bunch of teenagers. Like, I can't believe my mom did that. Like, looking, and I talked her into it. She was very childlike. I feel like that I was the parent a lot as I got older. But what 16-year-old's not going to ask their parents something like that if they think they can get away with it? And then she did it. And her best friend, they sat out in the lobby and kind of kept an eye out. But, I mean, that place was full. There was like, I don't know how many kids there were in that place. 200 kids? I don't know. But anyway, I was just thinking to myself, that's crazy. I would never, ever do that. But my mom wasn't a Christian at that time, so I'm going to give her that. She did, you know. And like I said, she was 17 when she had me, so she was barely, what, if I was 16, she was 17, that's 37. She was still young. So, anyway, no, not even 37. Heck, wait a minute. I was turning 16, and she was 17 when she had me. Oh, she was 33. She was the age of my oldest son right now. That is so weird. And my daughter is older now than she was then. That is so freaky to think about things like that. But anyway, she gave me a PJ party with all my friends. That is crazy. And she let me date this guy that was 16 when I was 14. So you can guess what happened. I ended up getting pregnant. And I remember going to her one night because I had to, because like I was so scared. And for the longest time, I didn't think it could have been true. And I just didn't believe it. And me and my friend, Cheryl, I'm just going to call her by her first name. She was in pageants with me, actually. But she went to high school with me, too. We cut school one day at the beginning of school, right when school started. It was like right before my birthday, before my 15th birthday. And we drove to Planned Parenthood, or she did, because I wasn't old enough to drive yet. She drove me to Planned Parenthood, which was in the bad area of town. And I just remember I went in there, and I really was thinking like in denial big time, even though I had not had my friend in like 3 months. I'm thinking this can't be, because that, it just couldn't be. So I went, and she came back and was like, you're pregnant. When do you want to schedule your abortion? I was like, what? No, I'm not having an abortion, first of all. And second of all, I haven't even told my parents yet. Like, why would you ask me something like that? And I kind of got upset and left. Anyway, so I waited. My friend knew, of course. And I waited and waited. And finally, I was sitting there. I had to get the nerve up. And I went in there when my parents were both asleep one night. And they were not asleep. They were laying in the bed watching TV. And I went into their room. And I just remember standing by my dad's Chester drawer hutch thing. And I was like, so there's something I got to tell you. And I'm scared. And my mom straight out went, are you pregnant? And I said, yeah. And she said, go back to your room. And so I just went back to my room. And so after that, basically, it was an all-on war between me and my parents about having the baby, because I wanted to have the baby and at least give it up for adoption. Like, I did not believe in abortion. I did not want an abortion. I didn't think I could. I mean, I would have tried to do it if they would have let me, but I don't think it was fair to put that on them. So if they didn't want, to help me, I don't think that would have been fair. But I do, like, I asked them if I could go to California and stay with my aunt. Well, she was my great aunt, my grandmother, which my daddy's sister. She was in California, and so she lived out there. And I asked, could I just go there and stay? Nobody would have to know, and I could give the baby up for adoption there, and I could come back home, and nobody would ever know here, like because they were worried about what people would think. They didn't think about what it would do to my well-being or my mental health. And they literally told me if my nanny found out that I was pregnant, that it would give her a heart attack. She was old and she was sick, and that it would kill her. And they forced me, hold on, and they forced me to do that. I mean, like physically. And then my boyfriend also, like, he kind of didn't want me to do it either. But, he was 16 and he's thinking probably that's the easy way out, for him too. So he told me he would go along with whatever I agreed to, but he kind of was pushing it with my parents. And I know that my dad, because he worked for my dad, uh, worked construction for my dad. My dad gave him a job. So I know for a fact that my dad probably put a lot of pressure on him to pressure me. And I just felt like completely alone, because the one person that I would have run to tell, to try to save me from this fate, they told me if she found out about it, that it would kill her. And here I am, right at my 15th birthday. So I'm still 14. And my mind is not old enough to comprehend, the toll all this was going to take. And if my grandma found out anyway, my nanny found out anyway, if I would have known that she would have found out anyway, like, I would have run to her and tell her, please save me from this, and I feel like she would have, but you can't go back. But I learned from it, and God sure turned that thing around, because he has given me an opportunity to speak out about abortion, against abortion, at many places, and at our state capitol twice, and been on the news many times. And yeah, so God definitely turned me into a warrior. So for me to get to live to see Roe versus Wade overturned, needless to say, was like an amazing day for me. My child's name is Celeste. And I didn't even name her, but God named her. And all the years later, so many years later, I asked him what her name was. Well, I kept trying to come up with a name, and I never could come up with something that fit, because I kept coming up with boy names. And I didn't even comprehend that it could have been a girl. I don't know why. But I asked God, after all those years, when I was going for the heartbeat bill at the Capitol there. I think I showed a picture of it. But that what was my child's name? What was my baby's name? Because it had been so long at that time. And I distinctly heard right off the bat the word Celeste. I was like, wow. And then I looked up what that meant, and I was like, oh, wow. So anyway, I know I'm going to see Celeste again when I go to heaven, and the other baby that we lost. My husband and I, now, we lost a child after our last child was born. But this is a long one today, so I'm going to go ahead and stop it here, because I'm right at an hour, and I'll pick back up. This one was kind of all over the place today. The next time I'll try to make some notes and kind of stick to them a little better. But I got through a lot of stuff. So anyway, next time I'll try to keep a little bit better tracks of it. But now I've got the abortion out of the way. I've got the other thing that happened to me when I was 5 or 6 out of the way, and the relationship dynamic with my mom and what that looked like. Like I said, when I had my mom, I was like the mother in that situation. Once I got pregnant and moved out and all that stuff, it was, and even when I was like, I don't know, let's just put the fact that I kind of looked out for my mom once I got about 17. And she was my best friend, like I said, and I do not hold any animosity toward her, even though we would fight and we would argue and all this kind of stuff. And there was probably things at that time, in a younger time in my life, that I held against her that later I did forgive her for. Because, that abortion was a hard thing. But later, I told her I forgave her, and she cried. She said she couldn't forgive herself. She told me how proud she was of me for doing the things I was doing and standing up and taking a stand against that. And she was so thankful for that. And when I got pregnant the second time, that one killed her because she knew. I mean, I was leaving to go to model in New York in a couple of months from then, and with Elite, and she was, oh my gosh, that's like what she hung everything on. And we were sitting in the drive-through at Burger King, I remember, and she just straight out asked me. She said, "Are you pregnant?" And I said, "Yeah." And I'm not having an abortion. She said, "I wasn't even going to mention that." And we were just in the drive-through at Burger King. I remember them handing us the food, and she was like, "Well, we're going to have to go home and tell your dad." I said, "Okay." And honestly, that saved my life. Getting pregnant saved my life. And we'll get into that next time. But anyway, God bless you. And I love you. And thank you for listening to this because it was a long one today. But I'll come live in between this one and the next one and we can talk about it. I love you and have a great day. Bye.